and observation.
So this video, we want to talk about what, our own journeys and what we observe, taking people outside and seeing how aware or unaware they are in either the natural world and also what has maybe contributed to that in their lifestyle and developing that as a skill. I think people, you know, I would say the word awareness gets thrown a lot around these days, whether that's awareness of breath or all different types of things. But what does that actually look like when you're embodied in your awareness? Especially, I would say for us, we're talking about our physical senses.
So are you the person who walks through the hiking trail with your head down, just looking to see where your next step is? Or are you the person who is out there and any noise that happens is you're overly alert and you're in the fear state right away? These are both kind of extremes uh, that we can see and that we've fallen into ourselves with our awareness in nature. So sometimes with the phone, we have the tunnel vision, or with the computer, or with tasks, with day to day life and work, we can kind of just be hyper focused on one thing. And that doesn't lend itself to, say, walking through the forest, especially if you want to take in all the beautiful landscape and what's around you. And sometimes if you're in that hyper focus, let's say uh, you're on a hiking trail and you're out for a day or 2 days, sometimes you get into the focus of just putting your head down and moving just because you're trying to get to the end. And then your only goal and focus in nature, your only interaction with nature, is to accomplish the distance that you're supposed to go in a certain amount of time. And then that creates you kind of numb everything else out, and you're just like, okay, let's get to the end of the trail. Meanwhile, the whole reason you're out there is to enjoy nature and take it all in, but then your head down, kind of just powering through and losing everything else that's around you and all the beauty and the amazing things you might come across: animals, birds, food, medicine, mushrooms, beautiful pictures you could be taking, anything like that. And then I guess the reverse would be going out there with such a massive paranoia, I suppose, where you're afraid of the mushrooms that are going to poison you, the animals that are going to eat you, the
Every sound freaks you out because it's unknown.
yeah,
And
you're almost hyper aware, but not to a point that any of the information is providing any good information for you. It's almost just looking over your back, like, oh, am I going to be attacked by a big cat or a bear? Or, oh my God, what was that noise? You hear a couple leaves crinkle and you're on edge.
so I think let's take what Jeff just shared and add it to like more practical examples. So if your day-to-day lifestyle is going from phone to driving to computer to phone to driving to computer or something like that, you're essentially programming, we'll start with vision, your vision to be very narrow and, like Jeff said, super focused. And so an awareness to develop would be that open expansion, which some people call owl eyes. I'm here, but I'm not just staring at this one thing. My vision is actually taking in all my
A
surroundings.
panoramic view of the
Yeah.
landscape.
And so what happens though is that becomes dull. Just like we know, if you don't use your cells in your body, or like, whatever, your muscles, your vision, like they will atrophy over time. And so we want to be practicing, especially when people have dulled their senses. And I'm saying that not as a judgment. I really understand it because for most people, the culture we're living, the stimulus is so high and strong that you dull your senses to just get through with a calm nervous system. So a really good example of that would be like really loud sounds. So like if you live in the city and you're like constantly hearing super loud sounds, you're just what your body will let yourself take in is going to start decreasing. So then when people come into a more natural setting, they almost have to resensitize their ears to allow to pick up the nuances and also like the subtleties, because they're just like, that's too much. If I let all those sounds in, smell is a really great one. It's like your body's gonna be so overstimulated, you'll almost go crazy because you're letting too much of your senses being stimulated at once. And so what happens is you have that dulling,
and then you kind of exhaust your nervous system.
yeah.
So we'll see that when we bring individuals for retreats, is they come out here and either maybe the fear of animals at night with any little sound that happens, any snapping of a twig in the forest, movement in the forest, you're hyper aware and you almost drain yourself neurologically because your nerves are on edge and you're constantly like in fight or flight throughout the whole night, and then they don't get a lot of sleep, and then they have to function during a full day, and then they're just exhausted because they've been like down here and then back up here and then down here and then back up here, and then like they've basically physically haven't done anything super demanding, but neurologically speaking, they've been at like the peak. They've hit the peak, say, 40 times throughout the night, and that can really take a toll on you if you're planning on being in a beautiful place like this for a week, several weeks at a time.
Months, years. But I guess realizing too that you want to both practice the cultivating awareness and observation as a skill, and also it will come just naturally as you spend more and more time outside in nature, in your senses. And so with that, as you begin to transition and expand that ability to take in your environment, you want to also develop this skill. And this was something that I really, really experienced. So you spend, just say, 2 months in nature full time, and then you come back into the city, and you can have the opposite effect of then that city is so stimulating that like you either like break down, your nervous system shuts down, or you freak out and you want to just run away from it. And I would argue now, after really seeing how much distress that would cause in my body from like really bringing down and like tuning into my senses and then getting overstimulated again, you want to develop, and this is really a skill, to turn up and down your ability to let your body perceive. And that really comes with time, so that ideally we want to be resilient humans, right? So you don't want to just be living in the woods and then you come out for a family gathering or something, and you're so overstimulated that like you can't even talk to people or interact or have any normal conversation, or whatever it is, that your body shuts down because it's also in a stress response. So knowing that that can go both ways. And so in your ability to be resilient and adaptable, you want to understand your body to be able to shift in and out between those two environments.
And I would say nature provides this naturally for us, this throttling and this ability to switch back and forth. So for example, we're behind the camera where you guys can't see, there's a bit of a forest edge wall. And then if you look here, there's kind of a further landscape. So this is a great place for our eyes and our ocular musculature to do a far focus. So we're really using our eye muscles while we're here this whole time. And it's not the same through, let's say, your car window.
Yeah.
We've mentioned in previous courses and videos, it's not the same through a screen. So being out here to be able to look at the rocks at our feet, focus close, and then focus, say, at our skin level or our clothes, and then to focus at a distance there.
And then the sky,
and then
of course.
The sky, looking at birds, the sun, clouds. And then say this was on a hike, perhaps, or like a backpacking or a canoe trip. We would be on the river, we'd be seeing the bends, we see the water moving, we'd hear the water moving, so we'd have that stimulus. And then sometimes you'd move away from areas of the rapid moving water to calm areas where it'd be really calm and the noise would change. So we'd have this, we'd get to places where maybe there's waterfalls and there's rumbling in the earth, there's so much movement, and then the wind and the trees, and then you get to another spot and it's very, very quiet. And maybe the forest is so thick you can't even see through it, where you only have, this much room to move, and you are pretty much just focusing kind of what's in front of you. So nature kind of provides this min max kind of fluctuation, ebb and flow for our nervous system to naturally develop. And this would kind of be like your training out in wilderness, but also going back to the city. Yeah, that can be like just a huge stimulus. So it's something to work on coming out here, but you may notice going back, like the vehicles, the traffic, all these things, when you're in such a relaxed natural state out here. When you get back to the city, it's almost a hyper stimulus.
And another piece of developing awareness and observation is calming down your mental state and also just talking in general. So oftentimes people, they're constantly talking, responding to people in social situations. They're not, just in a quiet state in their body and just observing. You can do this in the middle of a city too. You can be calm, you can be in your senses with all this noise around you. But what naturally happens for people who come outside in our programs, they really just start to settle, and they're more comfortable just being um, quiet or still and just taking things in. So yeah, it's just another lens to be aware of as you develop the skill for yourself. And yeah, I would ask yourself, what sense, what is my sense that might be the weakest? And it could even be taste. It could really be any of them. So just asking yourself, okay, which sense do I have that's the weakness? What in my life could maybe be hindering my ability to fully take in? And yeah, just asking yourself too, how can I learn to develop that tuning, that dialing in of like when I really let everything come in, all this information come in, and when I, maybe dial back to be in certain environments.
And a good test for yourself is to, if you can manage a few days out in the wilderness, say a long weekend or a week, go out there, say without some type of mission to accomplish, like a hike or some type of distance to be covered, whether that's paddling and portaging, hiking, whatever it might be. Come out into an area like this where you're just planning on staying in one spot, and then see, after your camp set up and all that, like how much can you stay still? Are you just looking to do something, and maybe like be conscious of it, that, oh, I gotta cook the meal for the family, or I'm gonna go grab this, or like, are you constantly needing to do something? Then you'll know that in your environment at home, you can't sit still. What you need to do is relax, slow down, maybe meditate, find a sit spot. Your challenge is the slowing things down. And then the opposite being, if you come out here and like you're just la di da, you're just relaxed the whole time, that might be a sign that in your home life maybe things are really slowed down and you don't really do that much in your day to day. Maybe you have a sitting job or something like that, or who knows, but you might be on the opposite end of the spectrum where you need to get up and collect firewood, and you need to, accomplish these goals, get moving. Maybe you go to the lake or the river, or you do a distance hike or a walk. So being out in nature like this for, I would say, a few days at least, because often with our participants we see 2 or 3 days
Like minimum 3 days
to
to
settle in.
yeah.
And then the people who are just like, what can I do, can I help, can, like, what are we doing next, what's the plan for today, then you'll see those people um, sitting at the water's edge for 3-4 hours by themselves.
And with that, a reminder that sometimes it can be helpful for people to develop and cultivate the awareness or the expanded awareness while sitting. But ideally, you want to be in the end in that state 24/7. So yeah, even if you're gathering firewood, or you're always aware, and that will really decrease your chances of injuries in particular. Because yeah, when you're not aware, when you're not in your body, that's when things go wrong. And so it's, you know, it's a very practical skill, a survival skill for sure. It's not
Mm-hmm.
just being more in tune with the natural world. This, you know, when I was in these really extreme situations, you do not want to get hurt. And, you know, if we're working with knives, oftentimes the injury with the knives come from people who are in these high emotional states. The awareness goes out the window because they don't care, because they're in this triggered space.
They're doing
And then
things
something happens
unconsciously.
and they're doing it unconsciously.
They're
Yeah.
they're you know, they're somewhere else here and they're doing this thing with their
Yeah.
hands, which we can also, like, we find ourselves with work, with school, with home, with relationships is often
Yeah.
we're two places at once, and that's where kind of being in your body and in your senses and being out here, you don't want to, you know, be willy-nilly kind of with what you're doing. You want to be in the moment. So
And
yeah.
one last thing with awareness, and I think cultivating that within yourself, is sometimes people can trick themselves and tell stories. So they'll be like, oh, you know, a good example that's been in our life recently is someone being like, oh, I run really hot. And they're convinced that their own ability to perceive their body, that they're running very, very hot. And yet in reality, they're not. And they're really, really cold at night and struggling to stay warm. And so you're just remembering that, yeah, the awareness also takes this, yeah, this like humility that comes with it, where it could be someone else reflecting something back to you, or also just really,
The friend who says, oh, just sit down and relax with us, maybe
yeah,
yeah, it's a sign that, like, oh, maybe I'm the do too much person
yeah,
in the camp. Or, you know, hey, come collect firewood with me. Maybe it's like, oh darn, am I the person who's just like laissez-faire,
yeah,
just super relaxed at camp? Maybe I need to step up into more of a leadership role, or like, oh, I need
mm-hmm.
to like do some stuff while I'm here, because all I do at home is relax and watch Netflix and chill out or whatever. So like these little signs of having humility to know, like, okay, and it, like we said, it could take time. It could take 3-4 days
For sure.
for the city to kind of wash off you, and your frequency, your vibration out in the city, for you to come and that to kind of just fade away slowly. And like we said, we've had people on retreats where it's, you know, 3-4 days for them to kind of get off their vibe from their home work life, their, you know, their business, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're teachers or they're, you know, homemakers, any of these different things, for that to kind of just fade away. And then all the stuff in here kind of goes away, and they're finally in their body, and it's like, oh, okay, they woke up with the sun and they've been sitting, you know, at the water for 3-4 hours just enjoying life. Or, you know, like they went out into the forest and gathered firewood for the following day. So it can take some time for just being out there for a prolonged amount of time for that to kick in, because sometimes we don't notice these patterns. That's why I mentioned, especially with like a hiking, an accomplishment, like a goal oriented situation in nature, that can often fool us to be like, oh my god, like, yeah, I'm so like this, but really, you know, I'm super guilty of this. Is, you know, I'm spending the weekend out there and it's like, oh, we're gonna get this trail done, and the next day we're doing this trail, and then we're doing this, and then next thing you know, you've kind of just walked with your head down for 4 hours. So you're like, well, it's this time, we just ate lunch, we got to get there if we want to get back to camp
Yeah.
and do this. And then you're just in like the work mode, turned everything off just so you can get to the end goal, with just thinking the goal in mind instead of enjoying the process while you're out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So
Get out
hopefully
there.
there was some form of, you know, inspiration or
Observation.
yeah, or observation, or, you know, whatever around your journey. And we're all at different points in where we're becoming more self-aware and also aware outside of ourselves. And yeah.
I say get out there and try to find out